are kind of, that they are dispassionate about that. And I'm say that as somebody who is an investor in Anthropic. One of the reasons I'm an investor in Anthropic rather than GPT is that they took a very responsible line. They left GPT. The founders were at GPT. They didn't believe in the way that GPT was structuring themselves in terms of what the product they were producing. And Anthropic's position was creating something called constitutional AI. And the way I think of it is, there's two different ways to be a friend, right? And people expect different levels of friendship. I know people who, when you're their friend, they expect you to think and say everything they do is brilliant. And that's GPT. Oh, no, you weren't a twat last night. Sure. You called out people for, what's wrong with them. And you said that girl was fat and whatever, but you do you, honey. That's ChatGPT. Oh my God, your ideas, they're so brilliant and wonderful. And Anthropic and Claude is constitutional AI, which is, if you ask Claude, they're the type of friend that will tell you were being a bit of a twat last night and you shouldn't really do that again. And maybe you need to watch your drink, or maybe you need to go home after a few. That's the type of friend that Anthropic is. And I think that's why they're doing better in research and coding and things like that, where ethics and responsibility and the ability to say no is actually of value. And GPT is doing much better on a consumer-facing level because people want to be told that they're brilliant. It's a feature, not a bug. Exactly.
I just heard that GPT is just about to become. They were just saying that they're going to do sex. They're doing sex workers, or not sex workers, but they're going into the adult entertainment industry.
Willing to have spicy sexual conversations. And I think
that's going to go really terribly wrong.
I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, I think this is the other thing that people don't realize about GPT and these models is that people are talking about, it's not just like Google where, sure, it knows what you searched and, you searched, how can I bury a body? And then, it's giving you ads for shovels, I mean, that's as dark as it gets. But, you are telling ChatGPT your dating history. I know people who are saying, I went on a date with this guy, I actually really like blondes, like like you're telling it so much information that when eventually ChatGPT starts doing ads at you, it's going to make sure that any male in the image is blonde because you like blondes. I mean, it is going to know so much about how to target you and get you to depart with your money. That becomes really, in the ad community, is it interesting? Sure. Is it very scary? Yeah. How will we understand it? I don't know. You're
we won't even know.
Yeah.
We won't even know it's happening because I think that's the bigger challenge is we just won't know on an individual level. You just won't appreciate it. If they tweak the model to enable that, the height of manipulation, for example, I'll be broke.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be skinned.
Every ad coming out you is for attractive Brazilians, and you're going weird. I'm broke this month. I don't know how that happened.
Just it's not good. All right, well, I think again, this is I'm loving all this stuff. It's so you're able to verbalize such interesting things that are going on that it just people aren't thinking about at all. I'm not thinking about, and I think I like to consider myself, I've been quite up to date with what is going on. But these observations they're really insightful. Okay, so next one. Kubrick Labs line is we focus on the technology so you can focus on the creative. What's the main creative problem you're trying to solve?
I think that strangely, the main creative problems we often solve and are trying to solve are workflow problems that are taking away from the creative. The coverage tool is a great databasing tool for production companies. and it helps you chat and get to discussing the creative faster rather than doing data entry. So a lot of our tools are back office workflow tools that just allow you to focus more on the creative. But then I think that there are three main pillars where we're injecting ourselves. I think we've done a lot of that back office stuff and all of the databasing. One of the things I say about these language models is there's a lot of things that they promised they could do on day one. But the one thing they could always do on day one, and they've gotten so much better at, and they are the best, it's the one feature that I think is the best of theirs, is they can take semi-structured and unstructured information and structure it and database it incredibly fast. That is their best feature, because I think that that takes creative data and puts it on the table technologically and analytically in a real way, in a way that it hasn't been forever. It's a bit like when, you know, in the early 80s, when people saw a bunch of numbers in their financial data and they saw a computer that was good at numbers and they went, huh, I bet if we just shove all this in there, we'll be able to analyze and be able to come up with some really interesting ways to do things. And then Bloomberg and E-Trade and, you know, and all those kinds of things come out of that. But in that those nascent days, it was just, you know, this thing's good with numbers. And I think that that's the same thing here. Previously, let's say, for example, you wanted to analyze sentiment on a tweet. It was very binary, or, you know, it was either a positive tweet or a negative tweet about your brand. Now it's, or maybe trinary, positive, neutral, negative, right? So now, if you have a tweet that says, I love Apple, but I'm really disappointed in this iPhone, I think that it shows that their product teams are really asleep at the switch. I hope they come back and produce something better next year. That's a fairly complex tweet with a lot of things like overall their sentiment for the brand is incredibly positive. Have they let down on a product level? Yes. Or is this person hopeful for the future? Possibly. In that respect, maybe they're neutral on the future. From a product level, they're negative, and from a brand level, they're positive. So now you can really analyze that in a database and then have analytical tools, i.e., you know, machine learning or Gen AI tools that can break that down and understand that en masse. It can boil the ocean like that and give you insight into the way people are talking about your brand. That was simply not possible until these models came out. It would require far too much human data entry on too many different points of analysis. And so, yeah, so we really focus on a lot of that stuff, the analytics and the creative databasing. Then there's creative development. Obviously, a lot of the agencies that we work with, and you know, one of the agencies we work with named Superbloom, they were just shortlisted by Adweek as one of the breakthrough agencies of the year. You know, they're very tech forward. They're very on the front lines of this. I mean, I think that they go, listen, everybody's so focused on what it's going to output. I don't think we're in a copyright position to be able to focus on that too much. However, the mood film is dead. You know, pitch materials are fundamentally changing. If you can't express your idea in a fairly finished or prototyped way, you're going to be losing ground. And I think that that's absolutely correct. And so whether we're helping their studio teams and producers and strategists and creatives just upskill to, okay, like, what is the over under on Higgsfield versus Luma AI versus, you know, Gemini VO Flow versus, you know, and then on the print level, Nana Banana versus Fireflies or whatever else. We're helping triage that. And with so much model drift, so many features being released that are over promises that they don't actually deliver on until 6 months later, you can get in this like overstimulated place where you're constantly running after a new tool. And, you know, creative companies are already built on a foundation of quicksand. You are promising that through drawing and thinking and, you know, and filming something, you can demonstrate value to a client that they're going to pay for, and you can employ significant people to do that. You're already in that quicksand. You can't also be having your workflow change every 6 weeks because new AI tools are coming out. So I think it's about standardizing that process and doing storyboards and previses and pitch materials and all of that. And I think that that's where a lot of the fun gets to happen as well. So those are the two areas that we're focused on primarily.
It sounds great. It makes a lot of sense. Being part of the Warner Brothers Accelerator and NVIDIA Inception program, I don't think I've ever heard a company's name mentioned so much in recent times, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
It gives you a unique advantage, a unique vantage point. How are studios and tech companies thinking about AI's role in production?
Listen, I think that the studios and the entertainment community knows that things need to get faster and cheaper. I think that, you know, I had on my podcast, Sergio Lopez, you know,
I saw that. I thought it was a really good podcast. Everyone should listen to it. It's really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it is. And also because he's the guy of the moment in one area of our world it's just where it's really interesting. Omnicrom are, you know, I'm hearing their name. I'm hearing that word a lot more, that name. Yeah. I'm hearing it voiced a lot more.
Yeah, I've never I don't look for controversy on my podcast. It's a very much like assume everybody's doing the best and doing the best they can, and we're kind of supportive of everyone. But I got a lot of negativity about being supportive and being positive, speaking to Sergio about what Omnicom are doing. You know, I think that they've done a few things that have tweaked people a little bit, and like, for example, the fact that everybody at Goodby Silverstein and Partners or TBWA Shy a Day is now going to have an OMC email address rather than TBWA Shy a Day under Goodby. Like, Goodby is one of those places you would move countries to work at. Like, it's a Wieden and Kennedy, it's a BBH, it's one of these places that is, you know, a flame that all the creative moths go to, and you're proud of it. And to have an email address that is OMC, I do think that was a poor move. I understand it from a scalability standpoint, but those things are upset people, but are not really fundamentally that damaging. And as well, you know, a lot of the talk around, oh, they're going to centralize production, as though production is going to be this call center off in, you know, Alaska that, you know, you're going to call your producer and only interact with them like that. Their attitude was, listen, we own the Goodby building and we own the TBWA building. Like, that's where our offices are. You know? So the producers are going to sit there. You know, it's just possible that they may work slightly further afield. Anyway, I'm sorry, I completely lost the train of the question there. It was, how are entertainment companies?
I mean, how are they? You know, how are they? I mean, you're in the trenches on it. You can see you're literally in one place in the world that this is literally going on it. And you know, how are they seeing it? I mean, it's as though before, for example, you spoke about the ecosystem of how AI is actually working, using like examples of the Bedrock being the AWS system and things like that. I mean, how are you know, and I think it's interesting. The reason I mention that is because, you know, you suddenly have this observation and you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And you really put it together, you verbalize it so well. And I think the reason I mention that is because it's like, at the moment, everyone thinks AI is going to take over everything. Yeah. And I think, you were able to say, well, actually, it works like this. So, from what you're seeing, and what is going on, and what are they thinking? Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned speed and cost and things like that. But is there any specific areas? You know, you mentioned initially when you got the access to ChatGPT, you talked about coverage, which is a great one. But so
they're all doing that. And and they're using us and some of the people that came along after us, like Script Sense or Avail or some of those other guys. But yeah, I think that everybody's comfortable using it for back office workflow efficiencies. Everybody's like, okay, that is the low-hanging fruit. We don't run into copyright problems. As long as we incorporate it sensibly into our IT stack, we're not at any risk. Save things locally, make sure they're behind firewalls, make sure they're compliant, etc. Multi-factor authentication, all of that boring stuff. The next stage is creative ideation. Again, a bit like I was saying, of creating materials to help ideate and show that something's going to work. I think that most of the studios, I mean, Disney has the Imagineers. Warner Brothers has a group that's run by a guy named Kurt Zeckmeister that is the AI development studio. They also all participate at USC. There's a group called the Entertainment Technology Center. And they are a research group that each of the studios pays into. It was set up originally by George Lucas. They're on the front lines of developing a lot of tech for both distribution and events and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of different ideation things happening that are very exciting and very interesting. When it comes to actually exporting something that's going to be consumer facing, none of them are doing it. And I think none of them are doing it because they're waiting to see what happens with Disney, NBC Universal, and Warner Brothers have all sued Midjourney. That's the first multimodal AI or vision model AI that's being sued based on copyright grounds for copyright infringement and foundational training infringement. I think everybody will want to see how that pans out. And I think they picked Midjourney because Midjourney, they could pick Google, they could pick people who are bigger than them, but I think they went, okay, let's get precedent with this, this case, and then see what happens. But I think there's a lot of reticence. At the end of the day, these are the companies that have been stolen from, so they're very cautious. They don't want to be doing what's just happened to them, and they don't want to be getting into a position where they're putting something out as Warner Brothers, and then Disney's going to sue them because it was used on a foundational training model that has the original sin of copyright theft at its heart. So there's a lot of reticence, to go any further than just experimentation. But they are definitely experimenting and ideating and doing workflow stuff.
I was fascinated to hear recently about Runway and their relationship with Lionsgate, and how, because I remember I was quite close, not close in any way, but I was close to someone who's working at Lionsgate, and a year ago I was talking about AI to them. We were talking about different ideas, and he was saying how and then they did this deal, obviously with Runway, and that hasn't worked. There's this perception of, well, okay, we've got these IP issues. Okay, here's our, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lionsgate said, here's 10,000 films or however many they had in their library. Use your AI model to train on this, and let's see what we could do. And that we believe, I mean, the assumption being that we're going to make loads of movies out of this, and we're going to make tons of content out of it. And that just hasn't worked at all. And I think there's been this sort of, is that something you see? Is that something that's still the case, that people just can't do anything? I mean, what was your view on that when you heard that?
Yeah, I do think that there is a model out there that is trained on, owned and copyright cleared material called Moon Valley's Mary. I think that the problem is, once you've tasted champagne, it's hard to go back to beer. For me, it's the other way around. Once I've tasted beer, I'd never drink champagne again. But I think that the problem is, like, we created one of the first language models that had no copyright training in its underlying data, no copyright, stolen copyright. We had a lot of copyright material, but that had been either licensed or we knew people that owned that were comfortable with that. We worked on that with some of the bigger agencies, talent agencies. And everybody's super proud of it and super proud that they're working on this clean model. It makes them feel really good about themselves. And about 2 weeks in, they go, well, yeah, but it doesn't work as good as GPT. And I've tried GPT and it's so good. And you're like, yeah, there is a delta there. And that delta is hard to bridge when you've experienced what an unfettered training model experience is like. It's hard to get excited about something that's clean, that it's the equivalent of writing like a high school senior versus writing like a master's graduate, or a doctor, somebody who's doing their doctorate. It's a completely different experience. And I think that people are realizing that, and the training data that's required almost needs to be stolen to a degree. I mean, I know Moon Valley is out front, and they're talking to studios about that have bigger. Lionsgate's got a lot of data, but Warner Brothers has been doing this for 100 years. Disney's been doing it for 100 years. They have more. So, but I think Moon Valley will probably be the people who are able to reliably say whether even each studio has enough to be able to fully train an AI model from scratch. Obviously, there's LoRa's and and fine tuning or guide training off the back of an existing model, but that foundational model requires a huge amount of data.
I mean, I keep hearing on the data point, or the data point, as we say it. It's I had Larry Ellison, I think it was, the other day talking about they're creating artificial data now in order to feed the models, because it's just not enough around. And Elon Musk, I remember listening to him, and he was saying, there's not, they surpassed the entirety of human knowledge. Some time ago. I think it was last year that he said. And then that's it. So now we're in they're creating their own data. And he was also reminding everyone how challenging that is, because you've got no idea, you need more data, but you've no idea what's being produced, and the opportunity for disaster in certain ways. I mean, you shouldn't catastrophize, but the opportunity for hallucinations and what is, and the
also
data
it creates
created?
a sort of model breakdown at a certain point. And and you can already see it in GPT. Like GPT is learning off of itself and learning off its interactions, but you can watch it go, it's not this, it's that. Like anytime you see the list that it creates, or when it says this is not just a paradigm shift, it's the new normal. That phrasing structure is something you see all the time. And it's because ChatGPT is feeding off of its own outputs. And you saw it in real time when ChatGPT came out with its vision model. Do you remember the Ghibli trend that lasted for about 3 weeks last year? It was everybody was doing the studio Ghibli. They were Ghiblifying themselves.
Yes.
Well, the model then drifted in real time. I mean, even still now, if you ask for an animated anything, it will be slightly sepia toned. It will rely on orange hues more often than it will not. Oftentimes the animations will look a little bit Ghiblified. And that's because GPT was getting so much positive reinforcement from so many people going, this is brilliant, that it model drifted in real time. It created a bias towards a certain style. And, that's what it does. And when you create synthetic data, which is data that the GPT comes up with on its own, it amplifies, it assumes that that's correct. And then it amplifies the same things again. You'll still see the M dashes. You'll still see the same structure of sentences. You'll still see the same types of writing style. So there's an argument to be made, and a theory that there will come a time where we sort of reach a critical mass and it's not able to improve anymore. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that we kind of say to people, you got to keep a hold of your first party data, because it's the one set of data they don't have is your company's data.
That's a really good point. Okay, so you've worked at some of the best production companies in the world. Biscuit, Rogue, of course, 42. What lessons from that side are still vital in an AI-driven future?
Oh, I mean, the one that made me believe I could do Kubrick Labs is the most important one, which is, if you're a producer at a production company, especially like Biscuit or Rogue, hopefully you are being called with a few scripts a year that no one's ever done before. That you have to go back down to basics and go, Jesus, I mean, how do we even I mean, it's when Nikki Barnes was dropping, and MJZ were dropping bouncy balls on San Francisco, they went to the mill first before they even thought about doing it practically with gas cannons. There's that. You hope that you become one of those producers or work at one of those companies that gets those briefs. And I think that the wonderful thing about this moment we're in now is that actually that's the muscle that needs to keep being flexed. We get calls from some companies that I've looked up to my whole life, both in advertising and in entertainment. And they go, is this possible? And sometimes I can immediately go, oh, absolutely. Yeah. We've already kind of built something like that. Or we just need to change it like this. But quite a few times we get calls going, I don't know. I'm going to have to get back to you. And that skill, that not just comfortability, but you're actually hoping for it. You're hoping for a script to come in that, you know, the stuff that we would get set for Sam Brown at Rogue, the stuff that we would get sent for Noam or even Jeff Lowe. I know he's gone even bigger heights, but even back when I was working with him, we would get sent some scripts. You're like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know what's the balance between live action and post, and is post even really able to do it without it looking not in camera, and et cetera, et cetera. That to me is the biggest thing for sure.
That's really interesting. And I think that's a pretty, it's significant. And it's also, most producers have that.
Yeah.
A lot
Your
of
job isn't to know anyone,
in the DNA.
it's to know
It's
where to
like,
call. Know who to call.
And how we fix it, how we find finding solutions to it. That's really good to know. Okay. So there's a lot of fear about AI replacing creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's more of a creative partner than a threat?
I think it's definitely a threat. Economically, I think it's a massive threat. I think creatively, I don't think it's a threat, but the two go hand in hand. If economically, brands bring more of their creative ideation in-house or their creative execution in-house, that is going to mean fewer jobs at agencies for people who are, you know, wanting to get paid for being creative. What it's also going to create is, you know, in this new world of online creativity, people are pretty comfortable with quality not being like, you know, Mr. Beast, his videos, a little bit pixelated, not lit particularly well, or certainly mine, or fit. But everybody's comfortable on YouTube and with creators and on TikTok with production quality being a little bit less. I think that now with these tools coming out, their ability to do more is going to be greatly increased. So, you know, overall creativity is going to be fine. More creators, more people creating stuff that's going to be seen by more people. So in that respect, creativity is going to be fine. Creative industries where people get paid for their creativity are going to fracture even further than they already are. That middle class of creativity, or the ability to reliably pay your mortgage or your rent based on your creativity, I do think that those jobs are going to be under threat to a degree. I don't like saying it. I don't want to be banging that drum, but I think that is that's the problem. Is it's where creativity meets economy. You know, it's that reality. Because creativity, I think, exists higher up Maslow's hierarchy of human needs than people think it does. I think people think creativity comes after you're already upper middle class and your feet's up at the end of the day and all of your work is done and whatever else. And I just don't think that's the case. I think that people on their Saturdays create for fun. We had the lovely Sue Anderson from Roblox on the podcast, and she said, you know, people are enjoying themselves creating on our platform. Like creation is also entertainment, and it also gives us a sense of self-worth. And so, you know, I think, you know, people weren't painting on caves to just pass the time after, you know, a long day. I think it comes from within us, and it's necessary. And so some people will be using it as a tool. Other people will wow us by doing things the traditional way. But I think the economics surrounding all of those things and the risks associated with them will change undeniably.
Great answer.
Thanks, man.
That was really good. Yeah. Okay, next. What does the next 5 years of commercial production look like once AI is fully integrated?
I'm loving this session so far. This is great because it's so interesting because no one's discussing. Well, people are discussing it all the time, but when it's coming about this, it's just so prescient at the moment.
Yeah, I mean,
where do you see things? I mean, you must be having these conversations. And you know, it's very difficult. I mean, interesting speaking to Sergio.
Yeah,
you can
I
see
think that,
where that sort of consolidation's going on.
yeah, listen, I think that it'll get faster and more things will be out. I think that weirdly, on some level, you won't notice a lot of change from the consumer standpoint because there will still be great live action things done by the best in the business. Again, I think that middle class, and everybody will tell you, building a director is harder than it's ever been because, again, the lower and middle class of production value is moving in agencies, or it's being reduced by these new tools. So the 20 grand jobs that used to get sent from a Wieden and Kennedy to a production company and they could build a director on has gone in-house. So all of this consolidation at every level of the hierarchy, holding company, advertising agency, internal advertising production company or production department, traditional production company, service company and vendors, like that hierarchy at each stage, people skim off the top. And as all of the money flows and gets consolidated at the holding company level, and they're trying to keep as much of the profit as possible, and as well, their margins are reducing. And I haven't even added the client level, which is really where all the money is consolidating at, is the global corporate brands. So I think that the creative gap between the rich and the poor will continue to gulf the same way it's gulfing in every other part of society. And I think that these AI tools are going to be pour lighter fluid on that problem. But I also see, a lot of people who didn't think they had an opportunity showing up. It's funny to think about this, but I've been trying to show up on LinkedIn for the last kind of year. And I did a post that pissed off a lot of people that was about some guys at this studio in Italy named Anima Studios. They didn't have they hadn't grown up in the industry, but they now have an AI production studio that's doing very well. They are doing really cool, creative, personal projects and getting to do some really base level brand projects that I'm sure most creative directors at creative companies be like, well, it's not for me, and like, okay, fine. But somebody wants that job. I mean, I certainly did jobs for Halfords or NatWest or whatever else that weren't particularly creative, but helped keep the lights on. So I think that, they're entering the game. Now, everybody talks about new blood and supporting new blood, but then when those guys enter the game, everybody's like, fuck you guys. And it's like, okay, but are we supportive of new blood, or only when the new blood comes through the work experience, traditional kind of thing? Or are we going to be open-minded to new blood coming into the industry from, a smaller town in Italy?
I think that we both know, we both got a lot of experience with new directors. And also we both know now how challenging is, more challenging than ever. We all could agree on that. But I really think that, as always with most things, I think the opportunity now, if you're a director specifically, or a creative in a certain way, you've got the tools are there for you to make a big splash straight away. I mean, it's never been better in that respect to do something. If you've got a vision, you can at least ideate it or visualize it in a certain way. It may not be exactly as you wish, but it's like, but it really, it's going to be enough to get you through the door. Whereas before you couldn't even start unless you done a shoot or something like that. I mean, I keep thinking, not that music videos, people sadly aren't watching them in the same way as they used to, and they don't seem to have the same resonance or sort of clout that they used to, their importance. But for me, when I first saw this stuff, that was my immediate thought. You just said the music video is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's going to give artists like a whole thing, because you could just make your own adverts now, and theoretically it should be amazing. What I've also noticed as well,
your excuse for not having the reel you want is over.
But also what I've noticed is just on this generative AI, I've been following a lot of people. There's been a number of creators that I've been, sort of content creators I've been following who've been specifically working on just using generative AI. And no matter how, I started an AI, a little a TikTok. I had a little channel there called the AI Real Wizard. You know,
Right.
I literally, it was as base as that. I just got ChatGPT. I said, I want to test some stuff out. I want to see some stuff. I started looking at all these creators. I was checking them out. I was interacting with them. I started communicating with them. I started sharing their stuff online. I wanted to see how the platforms worked, how with these, you know, on TikTok, especially with this huge audience, whether certain things, what would resonate, what didn't. It was a great experience. But through that, I realized very, very quickly how challenging it is, like with anything, to make something good, to make something decent that's going to resonate. There was tons of stuff that looked visually appealing, was exciting, but was flat.
Yeah.
You know, didn't go anywhere. And I would say, from my experience, it was at least, you know, a huge margin, like 90% plus. You know, it's just everything was just whatever. Basic nonsense. Some of the stuff that worked, some of the stuff that I thought was excellent, even because, you know, with our experience, is that maybe it's the other thing as well to add to the conversation about what people need, that muscle you were talking about, is the eye for good work.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to be overwhelmed with visuals, especially some of the stuff that's coming out, but you can tell what's good and what isn't. And that's one of the things I really learned. And that's one of the things that really struck me. And I was quite surprised at how much, because initially I was like, this, you know, this is amazing. It's going to change everything. It's going to be the best thing ever. And that hasn't actually been the case. So, I don't know if you've experienced that as well, because you just see so much stuff.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that there's so much, you know, it takes a lot to be drawn in. And I think that weirdly, this is where the studios, you asked before about, you know, how are studios going to change in all of this, this environment. The studios at least have the IP, you know, so, you know, I'm more likely to sit down and watch somebody who's created an AI version of a Batman episode of something, because it's capitalizing on something that's moved me before. It's a property I'm interested in. Stuff that comes out that, you know, that doesn't have that hook is really hard to watch. But also, we're very early on. I mean, I think that, you know, if you look back at when YouTube started, I mean, I remember being at Wyden and Kennedy when YouTube first came out, and everybody was like, this is a flash in the pan piece of stupid crap. You know, it's just going to flood the internet with crap. And everybody's going to be in their backyard shooting some bullshit of them doing wrestling moves with their brother, and it's all going to be useless. And that argument sounds very similar to the AI slop argument. And I just think we're at that stage of development. The true creators who really get the medium, that know how to hook you early on, that know the visuals to use, that, you know, even amongst filmmaking, feature films and short films operate by two different storytelling structures. With a short film, you have to do something very much more similar to social media, where you have to hook somebody right up front. Whereas a feature film, you can start with an establishing shot and shots of the neighborhood before the kid that is the hero of the thing shows up. Like, they're different storytelling structures. And once you understand them, and the creators are trying to learn them now, they will undeniably succeed with them, because, you know, when smart people play around with things, they tend to succeed with them.
That's good.
But I think that one of the other, sorry.
No, I'm glad you
know I
picked me
talk
up.
too much.
No. I'm glad you picked up on the slot bit, because in my mind, you know, I was sharing my experience, and that's what I experienced. But you're absolutely right in a sense that, you know, I think I was going into it with this, like, this is the best thing ever, and I got I was a bit sort of like, it's not, it isn't the best thing ever. This isn't going there. But I think you're absolutely right, and it's obvious as well. Like, in 10 years' time. 5 years' time, things are going to move so much more.
The auteurs haven't shown up yet. You know,
and this will create its own auteurs. Like you mentioned, YouTube. There's the Mr. Beast, for example. We'll have the Mr. Beast Gen AI person.
And it's like, and I think that that's the thing, is that the auteurs, the Mr. Beasts, the Christopher Nolans, the Dan Wydens, the Noam Murrows, the Ring and Ledwiges, they either haven't shown up yet, or they're still tinkering and at the beginning of this journey. And I think that, so I do, you know, I don't think you can look at what's out now as an indicator of what's coming. because again, I think that creativity's purpose is to surprise us. And I think that when we were talking a bit about what are the studios going to do and what are the agencies going to do, I think that the studios, you might see them act a little bit more like a sports team. You know, obviously I just watched the Beckham documentary and then his wife's documentary, and you know, he was brought up through the Manchester United training camp and then put on the junior team and then put on, you know, I mean, he is the model by which somebody elevates through that system. And that's because they start scouting at a very young age. And I wouldn't be surprised if a Warner Brothers, a Disney, a Sony start reaching out to kids who have created something cool in their dorm room and going, hey, when you're done with college, or maybe this summer, come to our AI course, because if you want a shot at making an AI Batman episode, or we've got this online AI episodic series about Nightwing or one of the lesser Batman characters, maybe they don't, but if that kid likes Batman, he's going to have, like, if you want to play at Old Trafford, you have to be on Manchester United. And I think that if that kid in his dorm room likes Batman and he wants to play with it, he's going to have to be working out of the Warner Brothers studio lot or have some sort of agreement with Warner Brothers in order to do that. And I think that that could be their USP, because they own all of the really lovely, amazing historical, cultural, iconic work that we all love and still respond to.
That's really interesting. Giving them a lifeline there.
Yeah,
No,
like
I just
think
keep
that they
reading.
might
I
just
just
act
keep.
like recruiters.
Yeah. Well, also that's the traditional way that the filmmakers work. They were, you know, the actors were signed for X amount of time, and directors as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so having worked with talents like Sharon Horgan and Steve Coogan, how do you maintain authenticity when using technology to scale creativity? It's quite a complicated question.
It is quite a complicated question, especially because I certainly can't be. I've met Sharon a few times, both in her capacity at Merman and on the film, like at the premiere and a few times at things after that. I didn't work I actually invested in and helped out with the early development of those scripts with 42 and invested early on in those films. So yes, I can't really speak to that so much. But
you've worked with people on that level before.
Yeah, I've been very lucky to do some cool things with some very cool, people and companies. But yeah, I mean, in terms of authenticity, I think you can only just meet people where they are and prove that you're not, that you have an understanding of the stresses of their job. I think that, I helped out with a film called Welcome to the Punch way back in the day. It was directed by Aaron Creevy, EP by Ridley Scott, James McAvoy, Mark Strong. Being on set for that and watching the way Mark Strong comes at the character or needs to deal with himself between scenes, and James McAvoy, I think that part of it is not insisting on yourself and your own, things. Like, I would never dream of saying hi or talking to him about something. He's in the middle of acting. He's in the middle of doing his job. And I think that, what we find, even I was at one of the studios yesterday, and, the people I'm meeting with are meeting to meeting and busy to busy. And, it's not assuming that this problem that you're solving is their biggest problem. It's coming very aware that everything we do is hard, whether it's at production companies or agencies or studios or it's all hard, and it takes a lot of faith and risk to, especially for the creatives, directors and art directors and copywriters, and then all of the crews. But it takes a huge amount of risk to do what we do, and people take it very seriously. And I think that authenticity really just comes from recognizing that everybody's having a hard time. like, like, and to just try to be of help, try to get out of the way, make your solution as simple and as easy to understand as possible, and try to be as frictionless as possible as a partner. You know, no matter what the role is, solve some problems and do it quietly.
It's really interesting. The people I've been talking to through this, actually, because I'm really enjoying the experiences. The word empathy keeps coming up because, you know, when you mentioned, you know, when we're in production houses getting scripts.
Yeah.
And you get the script and, you know, you're like, this is fucking shit. They need to do X, Y, and Z. You know, you've got all these ideas and everyone suddenly, the director's got all these ideas on it and you like, it's not good enough. You're trying to rewrite it or whatever. And you're pushing back and it's almost an affront to your creativity or your perception of creativity that you've been given this or whatever. And the reality is that it's probably taken a year to get through the client. You know, there's been a myriad of different issues that have been going on. And it's just being empathetic and just having a bit of empathy, I think, is what you're saying as well. I think
those creatives may not have gotten their last 3 things awarded. Like this may be the first thing that's getting made,
and it might be their one thing for the whole year. I think the other thing that's come through, I was speaking to another friend, and he was just he said, you know, and I think I mentioned it, and he repeated it, which was just don't be a dick. You know, that's a huge learning thing for most people. It's just like you said, you know, to be frictionless and be mindful of others, and it's just don't be a dick. Fine. Okay. So on the next one, you've invested in companies like Anthropic and Coldvest. What do you look for when backing an idea?
Mainly the people. I found that the only times, and like, listen, I've invested in things that have made money, invested in things that have lost money. It's particularly galling and irritating to lose money when you feel like the person or people you were backing took the money and were just feeling themselves. Oh, I've got this company and I've got this, like, you know, the guys at 42 Management and Production are a great example. 42 Management and Production, you know, they had produced that film, Welcome to the Punch. Aaron Creevy is a great friend of mine. Ben Pugh and he produced my first ever ad when I was the first ad I got to produce on my own at Wieden & Kennedy for Nike. We all created a great relationship. They then went on. I know how hard those guys work on a daily basis. And I know that when they reached a successful point, they wouldn't be sitting around and going out to as many lunches as they could go out to or whatever else. They would still be diligently putting one foot in front of the other. I mean, the greatest example with 42 is any entertainment company, especially management and agencies, where your talent needs to be working for you to get paid. You know, and if you're a production company as well, you need to be working for you to get paid. There's been 2 massive black swan events in the last 5 years. One is obviously COVID, which shut down global production, which means none of these companies could even earn a penny, maybe off residual deals and back end and of previous deals, but no new money coming in. And then you've got the black swan event of the writers and actors strike. That again shut down production. It puts them in a position where they should have been. I mean, you know, Lionsgate bought a portion of their company, and they were just reaching a point where sitting down and having a cigar and putting your feet up on your desk sure felt like an attractive thing to do. And they then had to go into the absolute quagmire of those 2 black swan events and come out the other side. And they've come out stronger, and it's incredible credit to them. But people who want to have done the thing, there's the people who want to do the thing. And then there's the people who want to have done the thing, you know, and they want to sit on the other end of having produced a movie or, you know, or started an agency or won an award, whatever else. They don't actually like the process of getting it done. If you're that second type of person, when those black swan events come up, you're more likely to quit, you know, because is this worth the award I might win at the end of it? And usually the answer is not. If you like the doing of the thing, you might come through. So usually it's people who are just passionate. There's a great girl named Zara who is another thing I just backed called Lore, that's in closed beta. It's just about to open up. They've been pitching to all of the studios. They are an AI and search navigation tool for fandoms. And
I think I've heard about this somehow.
Yeah,
maybe I've heard about it from something maybe I was listening to one of your podcasts and you were talking about it, or maybe it's just the word lore. It's a great, is that the name of the company?
Yeah, it's Lore AI. And
it's a great name because that's just it seems to be bandied around everywhere at the moment. I hear the lore of this, the lore of that.
Yeah, and her insight was fan communities are fractured. So like if you're a Taylor Swift fan, or you're a One Direction fan, or you're a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan, or a Lord of the Rings fan, all that stuff is all over the place. She kind of brings it all together, powered by AI. And she also like does these, what's very sticky is that there are these sort of mind maps of, oh, here's how, like, where are you? There's a global fandom ranking that you can kind of get into, and then you can see people's mind maps of what are the things that they were interested in as a Taylor Swift fan. Was it her set lists? Was it her outfits? Was it her deals with Louboutin? Was it her, like, what are those things? Was it her sex life and relationships? And was it the songwriting, or what, and that becomes very sticky and very interesting because you're already engaging people with one of the things that they care about the most in this world. So it's incredibly, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say.
It defines exactly. They feel that they define themselves through it.
Yeah, and just seeing her metrics and how long people are staying on the platform, I think it has a very bright future ahead. But again, that is, you're not going to stop her. If she doesn't get the money, she's still going to do it. And I think that is the most impressive thing. And I think that if it's not the right team, I mean, again, and as well, I respected what Anthropic did and when they broke away from GPT and the reasons why they did. And again, I think that if you kind of focus on that and you believe they're coming from a good place, I think that you can at least feel good if it fails. I think that's the thing. Obviously, you want to participate financially when they succeed, but if they fail, you don't go, I'm a fucking idiot, and you don't go, oh shit, there's that money out the door,
Yeah, that's good. What advice would you give producers and creatives who want to get ahead of the AI curve? So that's what they're all waiting to understand. Everyone's sitting there going, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
What would you say?
The irritating thing is that the best answer is have a play. Start creating your own stuff. Start trying to solve problems throughout multiple things. Go on Reddit threads of people who are armchair animators using AI. There's Higgsfield Reddit threads. There's Luma Labs Reddit threads, VO3, Sora. You can find out about training Lauras to create character permanence across your content. Above and beyond that, there's things like Curious Refuge. There's Dreamlab. There's lots of online resources where for $1,000 or something like that, you can, take video training courses. Those are incredibly valuable. The GPT courses that they release are pretty good. They will teach you how to create GPTs and mini agents of your own. There's no substitute for having a play and being interested. If you are telling a story about your grandmother and the way when she met your grandfather, and that means something to you, you will power through the pain points and go, why does she not look the same in shot 3? And you'll go on the Reddit thread and you'll go, Laura training. Okay, I have to figure out how to train a Laura on all these pictures of my grandma. And your care for that, your interest in that will teach you more than watching any video could possibly teach you.
It's doing is the key, and then learning through that experience, and then you get through it. I completely.
And then great, there really are great training courses, and Reddit threads are phenomenal.
Just wanting to learn and learning, getting the joy from learning is the key, isn't it?
And I guess the other thing is when somebody presents you with an AI tool, don't turn your nose up at it. the key ingredient to all creativity is an open mind. And so I think that would be the other thing. If your company or somebody says you should use this tool, at very least try it. Start getting proficient enough to be cognizant of what they can do.
I think it's very easy, myself included, of just I'm going to definitely try out some different learning some different LLM models. I'm just going to move away from ChatGPT. I've been trying other ones, but it's just so easy to stay with one thing and not try new things. And I'm fascinated with Reddit. I hadn't ever considered going to Reddit and checking out all these things. I mean, you're like, you'll obviously go there, and now I will. And that's really interesting. That's a really good thing to be sharing.
Also, we have to, because, for example, something that Gemini was doing very well. So we solve complex problems. So we're always testing the different models, because if there's something called model drift, and something that Gemini was doing very, very, very well for us and for our clients 9 months ago, it stopped doing well 3 months ago. And luckily we test all of them periodically, and it started to give really bad results. And part of that's because the new models are the most expensive to run, and the token fees don't change. So they will either have them triage your question and send it to lesser models if they can get away with it. But also sometimes they'll just nerf the model a little bit. And so Gemini was absolutely the leader. It had the best context understanding of anything up until 3 months ago. And luckily that was right around the time that Sonnet 4.5 was released by Anthropic. And now Sonnet has the absolute best context understanding. So you can give it 1 million tokens, and where previously, even if it had 1 million token context window, and I think Sonnet 4.5 is now at 2 million tokens, it was great at the beginning, it was great at the end. If you gave it War and Peace, fabulous at understanding the beginning and the end. Hallucination or misunderstanding or just generalities in the middle. Now, Sonnet 4.5 is really very good. And yeah, Gemini was the leader in that. And now, and we're having that context thing because we're now comparing scripts, 2 separate scripts. And that's only, 150,000 tokens. And it doesn't do very well. I mean, we still have to do a lot of programmatic work to make it work, different drafts of scripts. But yeah, that differential in the way they used to operate versus the way they operate today can be really detrimental when building things. So you sort of always want to be trying different things because they change.
That's really good. That's really good to know. And then one of the last questions, I've got some quick fires after this, so I'm not going to let you off too quickly, but this is one of the last questions. If you could rebuild the production model from scratch today, what would it look like? I mean,
gosh,
would you?
I don't think I would.
To do that. You couldn't. No, that's the thing I was going to say.
I just love it too much. I love being in an agency when somebody says, I have this idea, I'm not sure if it's possible. That, that thing of grab your phone, let's just shoot a little test of something over here. Like, that process is so fun. It's the reason for wanting, it's not the reason that these things exist, because obviously the things exist actually to create something that will sell more shoes or sell more cars or sell more Coca-Cola. But the reason we want to be in it, and the reason we're rooting for the industry to survive and to stay the same, and the reason I'm rooting for, I was lucky to be interviewed by Little Black Book for the campaign about the 25 years of Biscuit, and I was a very small part of it. But man, I'm rooting for that company ever since the day I left it. Even when I was competing against it, I'm rooting for Rogue, I'm rooting for Wyden and Kennedy. But these are great places that do amazing things, and if you're a part of it, it's like cheering for your college sports team or the sports team you grew up with. Like, we want that to succeed because of that alchemy of trying and failing and believing that, Dan Wyden's quote, "You're useless to me until you fail big at least twice." That's awesome. You think that everybody says that in an accounting firm or a law firm? No, and that's what's great about it. I think I would augment, I would take some of the pain points off people. I think that when you're doing sales, for example, you know, we were both salespeople at various points in time. You come back from a meeting and you log the meeting, and then you do the thing and you have a chat about, oh, there's this thing out there, and oh, I've heard it's a Halford script. I don't know why I'm stuck on Halford's. I've heard it's a Halford script. Got 250K. How do we talk to the, okay, pull up the creatives. Okay, well, oh, we worked with that creative on this thing. Or, oh, even better, I always try to really respect anyone who sent us in a script. I think that, like, everybody's focused on winning the job. I was focused on, all I'm out here doing every day is begging for opportunities. If you bless me with one of those opportunities, we used to send biscuits out every quarter to anyone who sent us a script. We just wanted to appreciate that. But yeah, like, you know, ooh, they sent us a script 2 years ago. Oh my God, that person clearly likes us. So maybe if we reach out, that wouldn't be a bad thing, or whatever else. That process is great. But when you're at a company and all EPs and salespeople also have to get into the working with the directors on the treatments and figuring out how that's going to go into the agency. And you have a lot of creative hard work to do. And that sales stuff is very important. Do you have to spend that much of your day servicing that data environment?
Yeah.
And plugging in all that data and figuring out and going, oh, wait, that name seems familiar. Wait a minute. That, no, you don't. And when opportunities come in, I remember when at Biscuit, it was, you know, because Rogue obviously already had the infrastructure, but when starting Biscuit, it was me. That was it. That was the only people on the ground in the UK. And what it meant was I was out there doing sales, and then we get an opportunity in at the end of the day, and I'd be like, okay, got to log this and write the email about what the opportunity is. Who are the creatives? What have the creatives done before that might be relevant, and show us whether it's worth doing or et cetera. All of that, an opportunity coming in should be a wonderful moment. But too often it comes in and you're like, oh, no, I gotta write that, you know, and it's like you're taking the wind out of your own sails. And that's the thing I would change the most is